Live and direct. Go!
This is Guest List Plus One, live.
You're listening to Guest List Plus One, live, where music meets technology and Web3. Join us and explore how we can change music.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Welcome to Guest List Plus One, our panel series and recorded podcast. I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. We're joined here today by Robert Habermeier, from co-founder of Polkadot, Phil Kwok from EasyA, an educational music platform, Maya De La Rosa from CTO of MuFi, and DonDiego Sanchez, Polkadot ambassador, and Emmy-nominated producer. Yeah. Right? If everyone please take a seat, we'll get the panel started. So tonight we're talking about the music industry and how absolutely fucked up it is. It's a pretty predatory place. It's caused by a lot of traditional systems, and Guest List Plus One, we believe here that Web3 has a place in the future of how we can fix these problems in the music economy. And this isn't like a shill fest for Polkadot, by the way. We are sponsored by Polkadot, of course. It's also not a competition, but there are so many smart and incredible people that build in this space, and we just feel that there could be like a much more collaborative effort, an open dialogue between different ecosystems, and really connecting the dots between builders and musicians. So we hope that this becomes an ongoing dialogue, and the result being empathetic products that actually work for the music industry. So, does everyone have a microphone? No. Oh, we got a couple microphones.
1, 2, 1, 2.
Maya, you're out. Sorry. You guys can share one. Since we're here at Meow Wolf, and it's basically another planet, I'm going to ask this question. If aliens came down to Earth and put a laser to your head, a laser beam to your head, asking you to explain what your job was in 5 seconds or less, what would it be? Go.
I co-founded an app that's the Duolingo for blockchain.
Well, that was actually less than 5 seconds. Go ahead.
Building resilient global financial systems.
Good Lord. What about you, Mia?
I just code cute chat.
Okay, I love that.
And I'm a Polkadot agent.
Okay,
That's
I love
it.
it. Next question. You get a DM. That's direct message for the layfolk. Here, from Daft Punk. We all know who Daft Punk is? I hope so if you're in this room. They know that you're blockchain gurus, and they want you to fix something in the music industry. What product are you pitching them? Go.
How to get lucky on the blockchain.
Oh, shit. Let's go.
That was the easy one.
That was a good one. Yeah, the rest of you guys are fucked.
First thing is, we got to get Daft Punk back together. And tour.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do.
Then maybe we can talk about working together. But yeah, Daft Punk's super futuristic. I'd love to do something with, hybrid, physical, digital experiences. I want to create probably an NFT project with them and find a way to go to Daft Punk concerts and then go into the Daft Punk anime.
I love that.
Yeah, that was a pretty good answer. I don't work in the music industry, but I have a lot of friends that do. And artists in general, they all complain about one thing, and that's like copyright and royalties, basically. How they can enforce their copyright, and how can they enforce it in a way that doesn't take up to 2 years to be able to get their money from things that they made, which is crazy. Like, imagine if you worked and then you had to wait 2 years to get your paycheck. That's why artists are starving, and I want to feed them.
Insanity. 2 years, up to 2 years for those royalties.
I was about to say that, so I will have to find something else. I'd guess that I don't know them personally, but I'm feeling that they have some ethics, and that blockchain could be probably the answer of the issue they're seeing in the music industry. and maybe the issue that made them left.
Aren't you French?
Yeah.
You should know Daft Punk personally.
I think I know who he is, but I'm not sure.
They just took their helmets off for the first time recently. No, I'm kidding. It's an inside joke, but yeah. Well, I love all these, and honestly, this is what we should be doing more frequently, right? I think creating constant ideation and iteration, coming up with like really crazy and you know, whether they're sensible ideas or ideas that maybe don't work. This is what we need to do to kind of figure out like what the future of music is. So that being said, I think it's important that we're standing in the right room, letting go of ego, because there are a lot of fucking assholes in the music industry that think they're going to solve everything, and they're not. And focusing on constantly iterating, knowing that we're going to fail, like 9 out of 10 times, because it's a pretty predatory place, right? Everything, you know, kind of sucks around it, and there are a lot of passionate people. So those two things don't really go together too well. That's a cocktail. That's a recipe for disaster, honestly. So let's talk about the tools we need as builders. Robert, this one's directed at you. You had said in a Space Monkeys interview that you believe ETH will always have a place. It's not going anywhere because of its critical mass acquired for developers and users, but you posed the question, where is Web3 headed for use cases, right? And how do different blockchains, i.e. Ethereum, Polkadot, et cetera, accommodate those use cases?
Yeah, I mean, it always depends how far out you look. I mean, if you go out to the heat death of the universe, Ethereum is probably not going to be there. But at least with a reasonable time horizon, like there's so much capital, so many builders, so much attention concentrated there, it's always going to play some role. But the technology, you know, it's stuff that was come up with over 10 years ago now. The next latest generation of blockchain platforms it has better code, it has better research, it has better implementations that enable more computation to be run. Use cases, I think, are always going to be financial or privacy-based. You know, essentially that it's something that can't be shut down, that it's going to be around as long as people are interested in it. And blockchain solved the double spend problem, which is a financial problem. So it's, I think, most likely going to be something based around trading and ownership and yield and dividends and things like that. But so much of our lives, especially now that they've been turned into, you know, we have this huge informational shadow of everything that we do on the internet. You know, everything is financialized. So I think this is also a non-answer, but like the use cases are anything that can be financialized. What exactly gets built is going to depend highly on the product teams that use it, who their connections are, where they can, you know, integrate into society. But what matters to them is, you know, building on a platform that's going to be around for a long time, that's highly stable and highly resilient to shocks, and something that can process a lot of throughput at internet scale. So, you know, these are kind of our North Stars for Polkadot and always have been, like why we've spent so much time trying to build a system that can just process a shitload of transactions.
What other thoughts do we have on use cases? Phil, you got anything else?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. Rob and I were actually talking about this before we went on the panel. I think that financial side is so important. We obviously just talked about it in the context of music, right, and royalties. And at EasyA, you know, we see probably the most builders that anybody gets to see in the space. It's such a privilege, right? We have got over 1 million users, and they're building crazy stuff. But I think that, honestly, like, you know, with all due respect to a lot of them, like, some of the ideas are a little bit whack, right, in terms of, like...
Whack. They're whack.
Little bit.
Whack as fuck.
So, and I think that, you know, genuinely, in terms of the ones that we see, like, really gaining traction, that are using blockchain well, it is really on that financial side, whether it is in DeFi, whether it is trading, those sorts of things, I think do really, really well. Or, you know, even obviously royalties is one of them on the blockchain. But I think that some of those others, there's been a lot that's been floated, and there are so many ideas. I think that as an industry, probably one of the most creative out of any out there. But I think that those bits that have really found product market fit over the past couple of years, and we see it within our community as well, are really around this financialization, this tokenization piece.
Maya De La Rosa, any thoughts?
Okay, I guess it's my turn. I think in general, it's just like, it's a new space. So like when you had the internet first come out, I mean, I was very young, so I didn't, most of this is from some experience working in the industry, but people were creating websites or products around everything. Like you were saying, anything that wasn't even feasible or was whack, I guess. I think blockchain is finally at a stage where the complexity is abstracted enough that we're seeing more and more developers coming in. Even in more complex to use blockchains like Polkadot, we're seeing an influx of developers coming in to do products as opposed to do like infrastructure behind the chain. And we're seeing them consolidating around things that are generating revenue or getting users and things like that. So I think not even probably like 2 more years, we'll start seeing like use cases that we expect to see long term. So it'll be like, obviously DeFi is here to stay, already has the users, but we'll be seeing new ones, a generation of NFTs that will not just be asset class, we're just investing or flipping to generate stuff, but more actually use case focused.
Also fun though.
I mean,
Like
both are great.
Fartcoin,
I
for
do
instance.
both, but only one is sustainable. The other one's just gambling. So I think we'll be seeing within the near future proper projects and products being built that are here for long term.
DDS.
Yeah.
That's
so
DonDiego Sanchez for the
Yeah.
layperson, by the way.
Yeah, and I'm not Spanish. So I'm not a dev, and I will talk about human relationship. I think the main use case of blockchain is to refocus on what is music creation originally. It's people moving emotions into other people's hearts. And we built an industry on top of that. Well, I do believe that blockchain could help us go back to that, you know? People being connected to other people through some artistic work. And that maybe we forgot that on the road. And that maybe this new information system that's reinventing human relationship maybe could help us go back to that, the origin stories of music and creation.
That's pretty interesting. I mean, that kind of is a great lead into my next question. This one's really for the group. Thank you for teeing it up, by the way, DDS. Let's be real for a second. Web3 was supposed to revolutionize music, right? This is what we heard from the beginning. Cutting out the middleman and promoting transparency. Yet, since that thought, little has changed, right? Like, to be fair, and it's not about putting down any projects or anything like that, but there's a lot of skirting the topic, dancing around the issue, or the plethora of issues, to be fair. And we did some cool things. We created like new asset classes, right? Like music as an asset class is like a super new thing that, music NFTs basically did for us. But what is the holdup from solving actually the real music industry problems that we see in traditional music? Anyone? Don't all jump at once.
I mean, I can take this one. I guess part of it is complexity. It's difficult to build on blockchain compared to Web 2. Web 2 has that, obviously, the internet started getting adopted around the 90s, and people have already been building tools for so long to abstract the internet layers, where like the average human does not know that the internet is actually multiple layers, and there's a bunch of tech stack talking to each other. They just go to a browser, they open their product they want to see, and they go to it. And blockchain is, I think, just beginning to realize how important abstraction is, both for not just the user, but the developer itself.
Because no one knows how to use it.
Well, it's like, I'm a
Unless you're a
developer,
developer.
and it's already difficult. Like, I've been developing in blockchain for 5 years, and obviously each blockchain varies. I've done a lot of different blockchains, but compared to Web 2, it's just the speed at which you go is exponentially slower. And that is like a domino, and you kick the first one, and then now you get less devs. With less devs, you get less products. With less products, you get less users, and so on. So I think complexity needs to get to a point where any dev can come in and just build to their heart's content. And I think we're getting there. A lot, especially EVM chains nowadays, are extremely abstracted. You have things like harder stuff to be able to test things without having to really deep dive too much. And I think that complexity can only be fixed by a lot of manpower. And the companies that run the game and have that manpower to be able to do that don't benefit from it. So why would they? You have like Sony and all these other...
That is the truth, if I ever heard it.
Yeah, I mean, all these big companies, they can afford to bypass this complexity and do it in months, but they won't because they benefit from having a closed-walled garden system. So they won't. So it's us, like smaller companies, doing this, but it takes time because of the complexity.
TDS?
Yeah, I think that's, there's a few factors there. I'd argue in many cases that people were pursuing the wrong problems. Now, I'm not in the music industry, but like we have this dichotomy in the tech world that we'll sometimes talk about the world of atoms and the world of bits. So the world of atoms is like real things, people, places, things you can hold, tangibles, and the world of bits is information. Information can be copied incredibly cheaply. And most of, I think, the challenges that people have focused on in the music industry have been focused on digital rights management, right? Like you have a song, which is bits, which means that really you can just copy it, and you want to focus on how to monetize that in a way that's fair to artists, which is a challenge, as I understand, that many artists face. But what you're really competing there is just with the ultimate distribution that companies like Spotify and Apple have over how people listen to and interact with music. So I think like the problems that maybe make the most sense to address in the blockchain space are ones that aren't focused necessarily on distribution, that aren't necessarily focused on royalties, that are maybe focused on some of the issues that people face on the back end of the music industry, or also how they engage with those tangible events like concerts and things that they go to create loyalty, to create engagement, to disintermediate that from the record labels. And like from first principles, I kind of feel like that may be a more successful approach.
Yeah, I mean, I would say you're looking down the barrel of a shotgun when you start going into like rights management and trying to, solve things with Web3, because it's a very complex game and it's highly fragmented and it's global. Music copyright is global today, where it wasn't as much before. Phil, what do you have to say?
I think if I look at my story and how I got into the space, it was through Bitcoin mining, actually. So 2013, I was a kid, 16-year-old kid, in my parents' basement mining the stuff, right? Because I stumbled across the Bitcoin white paper, and that was my first foray into the space, and started learning about all of these different things, Litecoin, Feathercoin, Primecoin, like everything that was happening at the time. And the reason I mention that is because I think that the reason that I was so excited about it was because of like the ownership that you could have, right? And the fact that you could contribute in such a permissionless way. So I think that is one area that personally I feel like is very, very exciting, that you can permissionlessly have access to and contribute to these sorts of things. And within music, I used to play the violin at school. I was in like symphony orchestra.
Same. I think I was second chair and you were first chair, right?
Exactly. We've got a little bit of a shared past there. And one of the things I loved doing was like taking songs and then making like my own version, right? And I think that's one of the bits that I think is very, very cool. We actually had a really cool team within the EasyA ecosystem that was building basically a way that you could attribute stems that you brought in from different artists. And that was really cool. And that's something where, you could tell, maybe this stem came from this artist and this musician, and then have some sort of attribution there. Because you have so many difficulties in the music space where artists will just copy each other and then they sue each other. So that's like one of the areas that I think is very interesting. But I think that from a user's perspective, I think that it's right that we've got to focus, definitely on like the right use cases. And I think that for me personally, like obviously there's the financial side, but also on the more personal side, on the interaction between users and their artists, I think that we can bring that really, really closely together by having more of that ownership over certain things, like whether it's NFTs from a particular artist, or even being able to add something to your own song, for example.
That's definitely interesting. DonDiego, you had earlier said something about the legal implications.
Yeah, So I think that blockchain technology are a global solution, and if the music issues are not solved yet, is that because there are local issues, and that it's actually It's actually blockchain facing the fact that societies were not ready for that, and that it will take a lot of time to adapt. And if you look at how majors in the cinema industry have used internet in their business model, it took like 25 to 30 years. And I guess that's what we're facing right now. I don't believe the complexity is an issue. I believe that if we were able to do something that will be accepted by our common society, it will be there already. But the complexity, let's say, lies on the legal frameworks too, and the constraints. Rights are not managed the same way in every part of the world. So having a global stateless solution for localized issues will be complicated to tackle. Even if it's the way.
Right. Yeah, it's a lot of paper-intensive processes, right? I mean, you've got bean counters in Paramus, New Jersey, that are handling Sony's accounting department. So, you know, it's a thing of the industry for sure. Let's talk a little bit about builders and their process for choosing a blockchain, right? So everyone's here at ETHDenver today for this week, and there are tons of really great blockchains out there that have all sorts of different technologies and tech stacks that, you know, can help us build really cool products. But the music industry has very specific problems that we're looking to solve, right? What are the qualifiers that make a blockchain a great fit for building in the music industry? Based on the idea that there's, you know, trillions of microtransactions that happen annually, and they're not just financial, right? They're all sorts of transactions.
Yeah, I mean, I think the number one and number two are scale and resilience, like the ability to post transactions, manage user accounts, you know, keep track of all of the user interactions with whatever, you know, application, with whatever digital platform they're using, and do that at scale. And also resilience, like making sure that this system is still going to be there. And I don't know, how many people had Neopets, right, back in the day?
I did. I love them.
Are your Neopets still there? Yeah.
I probably shouldn't admit that, but yeah.
But, you know, I'm pretty sure that
they
website
all
is
died
down,
though, right?
Right, like they all, you know, these things, these platforms have a tendency to just disappear, and often from one day to the next, a company goes bankrupt. You know, they sell off their assets. Whoever buys it doesn't want to maintain it anymore, and all of a sudden, that application that you were using is just gone. And oftentimes, like many beloved experiences or memories or, you know, data can be lost with it. So resilience is really number one. If you're trying to build like a very loyal user base, they want to have some confidence that what they're dealing with is going to be there in 5 or 10 or maybe even 15 years. You know, I think those are the big ones for any particular builder. Now, when it comes to the music industry, I'm not in the music industry, so I'm not intimately familiar with the details that, you know, the solutions that people are looking for, but these are big ones for everybody.
That makes a lot of sense. Maya, do you have any thoughts on this?
I mean, it's pretty much the same. It's just blockchain is transparent and it's auditable. It can be audited. So I think that can be implemented in a case what Rob was saying, where what you've done, your history through every platform is recorded in a way that it's not wiped when that platform goes away. And that's not just value for the user, but it's also value for the next product coming along the way, because like a new company can use that data to build a better product or start from a place that's not just scratch, like from nothing. And that ultimately benefits the users too. So I think having this record of the past will help the future. And that's how we keep things like moving forward, and being able to create systems that are less corrupt, and being able to keep track of, or at least keep everything you've worked on so far. Like there's games out there. I play a lot of video games. There's games out there that if they ever go away, I've already wasted, I don't know, over 2,000 hours and over like $10,000 worth of playing these games. Like,
right.
It'd be cool if that goes away and then another company can use that for something.
Oh, that's interesting, yeah.
So yeah, scaling, resilience. um, cheap block space,
Cheap block
because
space.
business planification, and also culture. And I think it matters a lot. And maybe it's not the good sponsor there. Maybe it should be the little bird, you know, the Kusama's one. Because I think it matters a lot, especially if you want to disrupt stuff. Like in order to create the example for the industry to follow, you need to disrupt codes, and maybe it plays a role where you're starting from, maybe.
Hmm. That's interesting. So it's like a cocktail of a few different things there that, I mean, community is like a pretty big piece of that. I mean, how do you, it's like a little chicken and the egg, right? Like how do you sort of build that community and also have the history that's there? You kind of have to, what's the key? Does anyone know the key
I
to
don't
make
have
that
the
work?
answer to that.
Rob?
I think it's a very important like aspect, you know, and Polkadot is, it's a community of many people who believe in it for a variety of different reasons. We have this notion that has been developed in the community of a Polkadot agent, like DonDiego here. People who they're not associated with like one of the big companies that's building Polkadot, but they're just individual actors who decide to help along projects in the ecosystem. And I think it's quite impressive, like what agents have been able to accomplish, like just lone people who are coordinating with others who are similarly minded to strike quite large deals often and like organize a lot of people. And I think like, you know, that if you're talking about building communities and building movements and building connection between people, like it's a very strong foundation to launch an application on, especially if that's something that's going to target experiences.
Okay, so let's we're just going to go into some transaction volume stuff, some technical mumbo jumbo here. You had your specialty. You had said also that ETH block space is very high quality, right? Although it can be fairly inefficient for like basic shit. Today, the music industry, specifically music copyright, it's global, and it's made up of trillions of microtransactions. So annually, it's a lot of transactions. So how does this dictate the solutions that developers and businesses should gravitate towards?
Yeah, I mean, first I'll define block space. So, you know, we're building in crypto, we're building blockchains. The blockchains are made of blocks. The blocks are made of transactions. There's space for a certain amount of transactions and computation, right?
Thank you, I needed
how
that.
much can go into the blockchain at any given moment? That's our notion of block space. And, you know, broadly, you're always trading off things like, you know, how secure is it? How good is the consensus protocol behind it? In economics, everything has a price. Like how much does it cost to destroy these blockchains? Those are the kinds of things that I refer to as quality. And then flexibility, like how many different kinds of things can you use this for? Is it highly programmable or is it highly limited? And as well, availability, like is this available at scale? And I think to contrast, you know, let's take an example of Ethereum. Ethereum is very high quality, reasonably flexible, but very low availability. There's not a lot of block space on Ethereum.
Which makes it
expensive.
Expensive.
Highly expensive, yeah.
Right.
Like, or you have something like Solana. And in Solana, they have a large quantity of block space, like pretty large. It's not super high quality. You know, the chain tends to go down a lot. There may be consensus issues. These things seem to pop up fairly regularly there. But it's very available, it's very cheap, and it's also reasonably flexible. And I think, like, you know, just to speak in concrete terms, if we're talking about 1,000 transactions per second, we're talking about 850 million transactions per day. And I think to serve these use cases, you need to make things cheap at billions of transactions per day or even trillions. Now, on Polkadot, we try to strike the right balance between these things. In a recent test on Polkadot, live in production, not just like numbers that we're making up as marketing materials, but like this is actually a stress test that was performed on the real production network. Polkadot did over 120,000 transactions per second.
No, you didn't.
No, it's actually 148,000, I believe.
148. Yeah.
Oh,
At least that's what we are.
I was just calling out as bullshit, but is that real?
No,
It's real?
No,
that's
it's real. It's real.
Okay.
Yeah, it's called, we called it the spamming, and it was actually a community event where anybody could go on a website and click a button to spam transactions to the blockchain, and the community got the meter into the red and sent it to 140,000.
Love the meter in the red.
Yeah,
That's some good shit.
But that comes out to like many billions of transactions every single day. And we're delivering that, with code that's been live since 2021, incrementally improved, not new systems that still take some time to be delivered. So I'll seize my shilling here. But, I think at those scales, you can handle an enormous volume of traffic for an enormous number of users and still have it be quite cheap, at least in terms of your blockchain costs. And, obviously tech startups require a bunch of different costs like DevOps and engineers and salaries and marketing and promotion. And as Maya pointed out, building on blockchain doesn't have the same level of tooling as building for the cloud does, right? But it's getting there. So I think that those costs are going to converge over time.
All right, well, let's assume that on transactions, let's stay on that for a second. Let's assume that 1/10 of the music industry can and will move into Web3. And let's call that 400 million in annual transaction volume. So assuming that the number of transactions annually for the music industry is about 4 trillion, right? What's actually required from an infrastructure and a primitive standpoint to run that securely and, most importantly, cost effectively?
I mean,
and controversial question, but is Polkadot the only blockchain that can do this, or are there other blockchains out there?
Oh, there's lots. I think with that level of scale, what you're talking about is quite achievable. 400 million transactions. Did you say a year or a day?
Oh, a year, but can we do it in a day?
I think you can do it in a day. At 1,000 transactions per second, assuming you can actually do 1,000 of these types of transactions, whatever they may be, you're talking about 800 million a day. So you could do that in a day. And I think there's actually a number of blockchains that can do it, right? But question is are they bringing battle-tested protocols? Are they bringing a relatively simple dev experience? Are they bringing billions of dollars in economic security? And more often than not, the answer to those questions are no. But I think at that level of scale, the pool of chains to choose from is much higher. But as we know, industries grow, and as you push those numbers higher and higher, I think the number of chains that can keep up will reduce and reduce.
Yeah, I was going to step in really quick there. To expand on that point, it's not about who can do this, I think. It's about who can do this reliably and consistently. For sure, 400 million transactions a day, allegedly, is doable.
Allegedly.
Yeah, but that's not the end all be all. A lot of chains tout these massive numbers, but over a certain period of time, you just cripple the entire chain. And that happened with, I don't know who here did sunflower farming back a year ago. It was a blockchain game, and then people were just farming sunflowers, and that thing crippled whatever chain it launched it on. It was crippled to a turtle. And no Web2 company, no big company will succeed if this is a thing they have to worry about going forward, where it's they're suddenly booming in business, and now because of that, they can only do 10% of the transactions they're supposed to be doing. So I think based on that, yes, there's a lot of chains that can handle this, but I think there's only a handful of chains that can actually handle it in a consistent, reliable way. And so far, from working on Polkadot, or I've worked with a lot of chains, but working lately on Polkadot, it seems like it's scaling to a very respectable level. We have companies like Mythos cranking out daily transactions that are kind of unseen in the blockchain space, over 1 million. So that's daily. So it just becomes a moment of when, not if, for this specifically tested chain. Other chains that I've worked on have struggled with this. So I'm excited to see other chains step up and try to do the same. But I think right now I would say there's probably 4 or 5 that could handle proper adoption.
I'll just add one thing that, from the business perspective and the predictability of the fees. And I don't think a lot of blockchains are providing that. from a Web2 perspective, what blockchain is providing is cool, but like you said, if because someone else is doing something on the chain, then your fees are spiking and you cannot use it anymore, then you just cannot even think about creating a business unit there. And let's say I'm a bit of a maxi, so I'm not aware of every single side of my bubble. But from what I'm hearing, there is few similar offer as the one of Polkadot, where being cheap is our objective. Because, we're seeing the world in billions of transactions per day, and we're not trying to be profitable right now with the current Web3 use case, because there is not really one actually today.
Right. Phil, you're on all these different blockchains, so tell us, is Polkadot the only one?
Yeah, I mean, I think today we're in a different place, definitely, to where we were maybe 5, obviously, definitely more than that years ago. The way that I look at it today is the problems that we're facing are different to how they were maybe a couple of years ago. What we've moved towards now is that if we talk about getting to 1 trillion transactions per year, for example, it's more a case of how are we going to get the builders who are going to be producing those. And how, for example, if we're talking about music industry, right, who is actually going to want to use that? Who is going to want to use that block space as well? And how do we attract them? So that is what I think about, 110% of my time right now. It's how do we attract those builders and how do we make sure that they understand the opportunities and they understand what they can do on the chain. So for me, I'm pretty confident that Polkadot and also some of these other chains out there, they're able to do it. It's more a case of who can actually provide a clear enough value proposition to builders so that they will come and actually produce that and adopt the chain.
Right. I mean, and a lot of that also is probably like liquidity and funding. Like Web3 as a space, and is definitely different than Web2, in that you can get interesting funding opportunities, like with Open and Polkadot as an example, right?
Yeah, and I think to your point as well, one thing that some people overlook is that there are some different chains take different approaches to it. Some chains will focus on one thing, another chain will focus on another, but often what we see is that there's this price innovation cycle, right? And so this is just very well observed and documented across crypto. When crypto prices go up, people come in, they want to build in the space, and then when it goes, people go, but a lot of people still stay, right? A good portion still stay. And I think that if we bring that down to an individual blockchain level as well, if you look at token price of a particular blockchain as well, that's something that often will attract builders a lot.
Right.
So there is that, you're right, that there is that element which isn't just focused on the tech. There's also things like the token price, community, of course, we've just talked about. And so there's all sorts of factors other than just the tech as well.
Yeah, I'm just going to step in really quick, but that leads to the same problem before, which is like what you were saying, multiple people working on the same network congests the network. And I worked on Polygon, Harmony, Ethereum, and a lot of different projects over the past 5 years. And so far, Polkadot is the only one that actually seems to be sticking to what it says it's doing. As in, for example, yesterday we onboarded over 1 million users with existential deposits. So that's 1 million wallets created plus 1 million transactions-ish on Polkadot in under, 3 hours? And there was not a single error in the console. And in my days of working Web3, I've never seen a chain take this kind of beating right off the bat without not even throwing a please stop kind of message. There was no issues whatsoever. It just went smoothly. And I haven't found another chain that can do that yet. Not that I'm not a Polkadot maxi. I'm just a tech maxi, I guess. And
yeah, and it's not about making maxis. I think that what you're speaking about, Phil, as well. This success begets success cycle that you see in crypto, I think, is often driven by the fact that it's so internally focused, right? Like people are building trading protocols for trading things that originate internally to the system, right? So of course, you're going to have these highly virtuous and then vicious cycles where attention comes and then it wanes. And I think the real escape hatch there is always going to be building real products with sustainable real world usage. Also going to take a quick moment I had a slight error in my mental math. I was saying 1,000 transactions per second is 800 million a day. It's not, it's 80 million, but we're doing 148. I just want to be clear, that we can do the multiplication.
Can we do 800 million though?
With some of the new tech we're working on, yes.
Is that NOMP?
But that's not live yet, right? Like, so if we're talking about stuff that actually is live today, then no. If we're talking about stuff that's going to be live like later this year, yes. We've been building some new databases.
Girl, that sounds good.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. You know, using hardware better to scale further for individual use cases. But yeah, like funding matters, building real world value matters. The problems are not raw scalability and technology. It's all about adoption and, you know, finding real product market fit for actual things.
Just a thing about the 80 million. It's way more. Like 150 per second.
Oh yeah,
is 6 million per minute. So
for sure.
It's like.
Yeah, no, I mean that just specifically that 1,000 transactions per second translates to 80 million per day, not 800 million per day, but that the Polkadot network as a whole, yes, can do much more than that, over 140,000.
Just to be sure, he was aware of.
This is a numbers panel now.
Well, I think that's more or less it. How are we doing on time? I think we're ready for a 15-minute break. Everyone in this audience needs to go grab a shot at the bar. Actually, we're not allowed to do shots, right? Malif wouldn't let us do that. But everyone grab a drink. I want to thank everyone here on the panel for joining us today, chatting about music and scalability, security, all the good things that we need in order to kind of like see the future through on music. And we'll see you guys in 15 minutes with David Brown from Beatport and Danny Days, the legendary DJ and producer.
Thank you for having us.
Guys.